Hello, everybody, and welcome to another film podcast episode. And I know last week that I just did my very first Gamera film podcast episode, but I'm going to be doing a next kaiju film episode. I'll be talking about the one who started it all with the giant monster Sega and in history. And yeah, unless I is what you want to call it, and it is the eighth wonder of the world, King Kong. Yeah, yeah. Then in this, now I know last year that I talked about King Kong Escapes from 1967 by Toho, that I did a podcast episode with Linda Miller herself, and but and then like almost like 2 years ago that I did King Kong versus Godzilla from 1962 that I did with my kaiju bro and from Goji Fan 98. But now I'm doing like a King Kong film marathon. And so since I already did 3 Kong film episodes that I did back then, so I thought, why not do a King Kong film podcast marathon? Started with the one that started it all from 1933, King Kong by RKO. And I say I'm really looking forward to talk about this film so much. So let's get on with the stream. And we have 3 special guests here. We have the Amin viewer with Snazzy. How's it going, my man?
Not bad. How are you?
I'm doing good. I long time no see, and I haven't had you since Godzilla. Actually, Abikasomi Frankenstein. I almost said Godzilla -1 live stream.
Yeah, I couldn't make that one, but
yeah,
glad to be here.
And also my big kaiju bro, who is in a lots of my film podcast episode, is the Monster Island Philval himself, Nathan. How's it going, bro?
Well, we're going to have a show to delight your curiosity. No, satisfy. I think that's what it. You think I would remember? I just saw this movie again last night. Okay.
And we have the last guest here. It is from the Godzilla novelization project. It is Daniel.
Ah, he's a monkey.
Hey, you look better.
Monkey. If anybody gets that reference, I'm sorry.
And you could be.
Oh!
All right, let's try that again. Hi, everybody. How's it going? How's it going?
Well, you have the same figure as mine.
I do. We actually match for this. I've got the bros here.
Right? I just got the neck.
Oh, the neck one's beautiful.
I should have got my neck. I should have got my neck as well. Or actually, well, I can. Well, yeah. I don't have any of mine. Well, wait, no, I have. I have a Kong. I have a Kong in my background.
Oh, there you go.
I have a Kong in my background. There you go.
I love that.
There he is.
I love that those NECA sets eventually started coming with the Skull Island creatures. That was such a treat.
Even though they're not accurate.
Not at all. Not in any way. No, but
who cares?
Was that one of those from the Lost Spider Pit scenes?
Well,
no,
the lizard is in the movie.
Like Lizard.
He's there.
He's in the movie. In fact, fun fact, he inspired the Skullcrawlers.
Mm-hmm.
And Neil is in the comments. Hey, how's it going, my man?
He got a shave.
Nice to know you're paying attention to my face that much. That's thank you, Neil. No, I did. I actually did. And next up is a haircut because this is too much.
I was gonna say someone is trying really hard to look to cosplay Doc from -1 there.
Doc from -1. I mean, up until the last 3 streams, I've had Doc as my nickname on streams. Yeah. Frankly, if my writing career keeps going the way it is, I'll have the gray tips without any use of hair dyes. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Clearly, I did not come with the proper name, so I'm gonna have to remedy that.
Must you? I mean, you could,
and I will,
and you will.
Yeah. But like I said, I mean, I've been looking forward to talk about this classic 1933 King Kong, the one that started it all. As you know, here's my copy of the Blu-ray release, and it's a Shield book.
Yeah, stop making me jealous, okay? I need to upgrade.
You got the original case.
You need to upgrade. I've just got the DVD.
Yes.
Oh,
although it does.
Wow! Look at all. We have like descending levels of buyer's remorse here.
If I was in front of my wall of tapes like I usually am, I could have grabbed my tape just to fully. There you go. You'll just have to just imagine it's here. It's right there. That's about it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've been looking forward to talk about this, and I know
I would just like to say, I'm going to repeat what I said all the way back in episode 2 of MIFV. I am delighted to be here to talk about one of the greatest movies of all time with some of my favorite people.
Yeah, and thanks a lot, Nathan, and you just stole what I was just about to say.
Oh,
but Thanks for saying that for me.
He starts it.
Dear God.
Yeah, and I've learned. Let me say, I've been doing lots of research to learn about this film and the behind the scenes, and about Willis O'Brien and Mercy Cooper. And
does anyone want to do a 7-hour stream on the original King Kong? Because I'm pretty sure we could. I know Danny has experience with this.
I'm just anticipating it.
That's right. This is a film I won't, for the sake of everybody's sanity, but could very easily spend 2 or 3 times the length of the actual film itself waxing about.
I mean, Danny,
I was going to say, what about 2 or 3 times the length of the Peter Jackson one?
I was about to say
Peter Jackson and a half.
The first time Danny was ever on the Film Vault was for Kong 05, and it was actually inspired by a tweet. He just said, like, he just randomly said one day, it's like, "Oh, I love Kong 05," and I'm like, "Oh, you love Kong 05? You're the guest for that episode. I'm glad you asked."
I was roped
in. And then it went down as originally, and the record stood for a long time. The longest episode of MIFV.
Right.
And he held that record for, like I said, for a while.
I think I might have broken my own record with a different episode. I don't remember what it was.
I don't recommend shattering vinyl because it's a very expensive investment.
This is true. Sorry, I punched you, Kong. I'm sorry, buddy.
It was an optical, but okay.
It was an optical illusion. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to chit chat about what very well might be the greatest film ever made. It's definitely
I gotta say this is one of the greatest giant monster films of all time in history.
It's not just one of the greatest kaiju movies, giant monster movies, whatever of all time. It's just one of the greatest films of all time. It might arguably be the most influential movie ever made. We would not have movies, we would not have cinema without this thing.
Yeah, because I mean, King Kong is one of the first giant movie monsters, and I mean, he was the most recognizable character in Hollywood.
And he inspired a bunch of filmmakers to become filmmakers, to get into the craft. He inspired people to become special effects artists. Without King Kong, we wouldn't have Godzilla. And without Godzilla, we wouldn't have Tokusatsu. And just it all goes back to King Kong. This monkey is responsible for all of it. And I know Jimmy, if he was here, would yell at me for saying monkey. Not
if it weren't for the giant monkey himself, we wouldn't have the Godzilla versus Kong and Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire films.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't have any of this stuff.
And Kong would go through his icon throughout the years in history. Like he go through sequels, remakes, video games, and even a Broadway show.
All video games.
Well, they did release a Peter Jackson video game.
No, I'm talking about there was this Kong video game last year that was infamously bad.
Unfinished.
What was that even called? Like Kong? It was Kong something.
It was
like
based on the Joe DeVito
Island or something. What?
It was based on the Joe DeVito book, the one with all the illustrations that had the like alternate dinosaurs. It was supposed to be that, but the book has some beautiful art. The game has gameplay.
Gameplay.
Well,
yeah.
It has something.
It's too bad because I've been a big fan of what DeVito has done with Kong and his kind of Marion C. Cooper estate approved corner of the franchise with the books and the short stories and the art and even a new novelization of the original movie that he was involved with. There they all are. Yeah.
The crossovers with Doc Savage and Tarzan.
Yes. And they're all great. And the mythology is really fascinating. Questions you never thought you had about, like, that didn't necessarily need to be answered, but just great questions that you never thought.
What's exciting is that you play your cards right. All of us can legally write King Kong stories.
Yes, this character is actually public domain.
Or no. In 5 years, though, the movie will be public domain. So all of 33 King Kong will be public domain.
That's a freaky thought, man.
It is a freaky thought.
We're going to be able to call the boat the Venture now instead of Wanderer. It's weird.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know how I'm going to deal with that.
But anyway, I'm sure Brendan's got a lot of great things that we could talk about.
Yeah. And before we get details of what we learn about the film and the filmmakers and the history of Kong, let's start what I've been doing in one of my previous episodes to talk about how we first discovered this film for the first time from our childhood. Let's see. I'll start with
go for it.
Me.
Oh, yes. Well, Brendan, you were enacting host privilege. Nice job.
True.
Yeah. So how I first discovered the big monkey himself. I mean, to be honest, like the 1933 classic wasn't my first King Kong film. My very first King Kong film I ever discovered, scratch it, reverse it. Well, how I first discovered the bit. I actually did Willy Wonka.
You did Willy Wonka. That's Willy Wonka. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I know what that is.
How I first discovered the big monkey himself is I didn't discover him from movies, but I discovered him at a theme park in Orlando, Florida.
Oh, so you got to go on Confrontation.
Yeah, that's how
I'm only a little jealous.
That's how I first discovered the big monkey. It's at a theme park of Confrontation. Well, first I never heard of it, and because I remember watching this tour video that I used to have of the old Universal Orlando tour video that it shows like a few seconds clip of Confrontation, and I was like, wow, who is this big monkey? And then my mom and my parents know about this character named King Kong, and I just called that ride the King Kong ride. I didn't call him Confrontation. I remember when I first go to Orlando, Florida, and I think it was back in 2001 or 2000, I think. I cannot remember, but I remember when that was my first time going there for the first time as a kid. And I remember that's how I first discovered Kong and the ride. At first, when we were in line going in there, like I got so scared, and believe me, that's what a lot of kids are when they go on rides for the first time. They are scary, and I didn't want to go on the ride, so I begged my dad to take me out of there, and then we just got off, and it just went to the gift shop to wait for my mom and my sister and my family, and I first discovered the Kong statue, and then I think a year later, or months later, after I got back from the trip, I I remember when my mom flipped through the channels to see if I can watch. She found the channel of the 1976 remake of King Kong. Then that's my very first Kong film I ever watched.
Wow.
Yeah, then, and I say that film makes me a King Kong fan, but I didn't watch the 76 remake that much, but yeah, wait, there's more. But and then when I went to my local video store and I saw a shelf, I mean, that's the same video store that I rent my very first Toho Godzilla film, Godzilla 1985. And I remember they have a shelf full of the old video cassettes and of the old classic films. I was hoping I was gonna find some Godzilla films. I mean, yeah, this is that time. That was like I think a year after I first discovered Toho Godzilla, and I remember there was a shelf of VHS that you can actually buy, not rent. And I found the original 1933 film King Kong. Yeah, and the VHS cover of it just shows like an old crappy like a film clip. You know, it has a picture of Kong in black and white holding Ann, and believe me, this VHS is so old. It was actually released in 1979 when it was released on VHS. I know, right? And I remember believe me, after I first watched it for the first time, I began watching it more and more and more, and I just fall in love with the original because has this amazing jungle background with stop motion dinosaurs, and that's what I love about this one so much. This is how I became a King Kong fan, and believe me, the VHS I used to have, the picture quality in it is so terrible. It's so blurry. I mean, you couldn't even see like what's going on. I mean, it's just the quality. It's just so awful. It was just...
All right, Danny, you're the one who would know this. Who released Kong on VHS in 1979? I must know this.
Oh,
I mean, I could be wrong. I think it's like in the early 80s. I mean, but
still,
that's not
Danny would know.
I'm trying to recall which of the first what was the first video label to actually release the film, and I would know this if I were in front of my wall of tapes because I could just reach behind me and grab the darn thing. It wouldn't have been RKO themselves. It might have been through some. Oh my gosh, it wouldn't have been through Paramount. No, it wouldn't have been through Paramount. I don't recall. I'm having a brain fart here. I will.
Yeah, and it would have been the restored version, correct? I think it had been fully restored, but not in terms of picture quality, but like all of the missing footage had been found.
Yeah, the missing footage was found in the 60s.
Yeah, the missing footage was discovered. Yeah, so there are no, to my knowledge, officially released home video versions like that relied solely on the censored cut in America. At least in home video.
Was it Criterion? The Criterion?
Oh goodness. Criterion did release it on VHS and Laserdisc later, but they did not release it in the 70s. I don't believe.
Yeah, late 70s. Geez, VHS had just started at that point. It would have been very new at that point, and most people wouldn't have had a VCR in their house. So you must have found something crazy cool, Brendan, because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, and besides the VHS that I brought, I also bought another VHS cover called, I think it's called Hollywood Dinosaur. I think it was like
it's a documentary, isn't it?
Yeah, that was called a documentary, and it has a picture of the 1968 Godzilla on the VHS cover, and I was like, Godzilla's is in this one, but
sort of.
But no, he's just only on the cover of this documentary of dinosaur films.
You know what? Yeah. Screw it. I'll be right back. VHS
he's gonna go find it. All right.
So now let's talk about him. So, what do you guys think of his haircut?
I feel like I could dip him into a bucket and mop my kitchen floor. Or I could like just take him and just like push him against the wall in Ubermogra and and scrub the walls.
Neat. Oh, it's like, oh my God, I couldn't hear you, huh?
The eyes of the ape. That sounds like that actually sounds like the title of a movie.
This is the oldest Kong VHS that I have, and it's from Turner Home Entertainment, which makes sense. Because that's back when Turner acquired. There you go. They had a lot of the RKO licenses at the time. Turner outright owned Kong, the original Kong, for a long time. And if you look at this tape, it does say the RKO collection at the top. So there you go. And this tape is from 1988. It's not as old, but there you go. That answers the question. Turner owned it for a long, long time.
Yeah,
that's astonishing because last I heard, maybe it was a more recent thing. I know Warner Brothers owns the RKO library at this point, which is, I'm guessing, is why they were able to make Kong Skull Island
to a certain degree. I mean, they still had to use the loophole because Universal owns most of the King Kong stuff at this point.
Yep.
Yeah, like the Peter Jackson.
Again, it is so convoluted and confusing. But I don't care what certain people who shall remain nameless keep saying. MonsterVerse Kong is a real King Kong.
Yeah, and Daniel, the VHS cover you just showed me, that wasn't it.
Yeah, based on your description, I figured this probably wasn't what you were describing, but it is produced in a one-of-a-kind master print.
I was going to say, everybody hold up their respective copies so we can get the.
There we go.
So we can get the the full range.
There it is. There it is. This is going to get the clicks right here. That's what it is.
Yeah, right here. This is thumbnail material right here. Except mine keeps phasing out of reality.
Brendan keeps like he makes his own awesome thumbnails. He doesn't need this. Like
Well, I'm an artist and I just love editing thumbnails.
Yeah. One of my favorite things is we'll all be talking together about, hey, should I do an episode on this? And I'll say yes, and then 2 seconds later we see the thumbnail and it's done and it's awesome and it's like live.
Yeah, it always looks like 5 minutes. I mean,
yep.
I mean, I'm gonna tell you right. Yeah, I tell you right now, Brendan. This year for Kim's charity stream for Christmas, we're giving you work.
There you go.
That is our plan. Neil, I have no idea what reaction you're talking about. Just so you know.
You'll have to go back and watch the stream again, Nate. And
apparently I will have to. So Brendan, did you finish your How I Met Kong story?
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. I mean, that's how I first discovered. I mean, I still love the original growing up, and I remember again the DVD version of it that was released in the same year that the Peter Jackson film was released. I remember I got that for Christmas along with Son of Kong and the original Mighty Joe Young.
That's yes, I'm still gonna say it's a glorious trilogy.
Yeah, and so that's it for my story of how I first discovered King Kong. Let's see who's next. Who tell me the story who first discovered the original 1933 or who first discovered the character Kong? Let's go with Daniel.
Oh.
Top of the head there.
All right, strap in. We're going to be here for at least an hour.
I have words for you, Nathan.
And you can't say them. This is a family show.
No. The words are, you're not wrong. What do you think I was going to say? Okay. So my journey with Kong is an interesting one. I couldn't tell you the first time I was fully aware that the character existed. It was just kind of one of those things. He was just kind of always part of the world, like I was born into a world where King Kong had been around for 60 years, and I've just never. He's just kind of always been there. Whether you're seeing him homaged in commercials or Scooby-Doo cartoons or something, or you're seeing him referenced in some way, or somebody's it's
used cars.
Yeah, that's right.
Balloons.
he's everywhere. I mean, he's they're inflatables, hawking Chevys in front of dealerships. There are off-brand versions everywhere. The idea of Kong on the Empire State Building, he's everywhere. You just know it. And I remember one of my fondest memories of, like, I think the first time I ever saw footage from the 33 film actually would have been at a baseball game. And I know that probably shocks a lot of, I clearly exude baseball fan.
Right.
Yeah, I was super into it, man. I sleep with a VHS copy of Angels in the Outfield under my pillow every night. I have a problem. But it's a great movie.
Obviously you would root for a California team being from Ohio. That just makes sense. True.
So my local Toledo, Ohio minor league. Goodness, my minor league team.
He played on the little the Toledo Ponies or something.
Toledo like that. It's almost as dignified. Our team is called the Mud Hens. The Toledo Mud Hens.
Okay, I would just say, quick aside. Minor league sports teams have some of the wildest names, and I kind of love it.
we have a hockey team called the Walleyes, and in Toledo, people love the Mud Hens. Like, people love their Mud Hens. I work like maybe a 2-minute drive from the stadium downtown. And we used to go all the time as a kid, and they have the bits where you're in the stands and they'll play videos and music to amp you up and get you to scream and clap. And they would play "We Will Rock You" to try to get people to stomp their feet and clap. Boom, boom, clap. And when I was a kid, they had this is very silly. They had a video they would play that used film clips. And there was a certain section of film clip that they used that was footage of Kong banging on the Skull Island door for the boom boom. And then you'll like this, Brendan, footage of Godzilla from Godzilla versus the Sea Monster clapping his hands for the clap.
Yeah. Woo!
So isn't that great? So it was King Kong, boom boom, and then Godzilla clap. And that's the first time I ever saw stop motion King Kong in my life, was that moment. I didn't know what it was from, but I mean, I kind of assumed it was Kong. It's hard to get that wrong. And it wouldn't
that rhymed.
You didn't realize.
That's right.
There's only one King Kong. The rest are wrong Kong.
Oh, Brendan, you have the power to remove him. You do. You can't actually kick him off the stream. So,
and now I can.
Thank you. Okay, my dream has come true. So, all right, bring him back. Bring him back.
Okay.
It's pandemonium, people.
Oh. So
now you're on that side.
You know where you can go, Daniel. The actual place. I
went to the restroom
Christian version. You can go there.
No, I went to the restroom before the stream. So you don't even have to say it. So I didn't see a Kong film. Actually, my first Kong film was the 05 film. I actually started with 05.
Wow, the Peter Jackson version?
The Peter Jackson version. That was the first Kong film I actually watched the whole way through. And
all 3 hours.
In the theater didn't exist yet.
That's right.
What didn't exist?
The extended cut.
Yep.
Which is 3.5.
Yes, it is dangerously close.
But God help us when we get the Lord of the Rings King Kong crossover. Oh my gosh.
I'll watch it.
Strap in for about 12 hours.
Okay. You're not saying anything I wouldn't watch so far. That's the thing. So that was my first exposure to, like, the overall story of Kong that we all know. Set in the 30s, they go to the island and gets kidnapped, dinosaurs, jaw breaking, Empire State Building. That's like that flow of the story. And it's so like just exploded my mind, like how wonderful that story was. And it compelled me to finally go and see it. And I was young. I think I was like 11 or 12. And it compelled me, like, I've got to go find the original version. And did, probably about a year or two later, found a copy of it at Barnes & Noble, the DVD, the 2-discer. Brought that home, watched it, and that was it. I'm like, my life was immediately changed. Like, I completely fell in love with that film in a way that echoed how I'd fallen in love with the PJ version, but in a different way. There was something just wonderfully pure about sitting and watching that film for the first time. I was in middle school, and just I like you said, Brendan, I fell in love with the aesthetics of it, the jungles, those beautiful Gustave Doré-esque fantasy jungles that just felt like they didn't end. With the dark foregrounds and the light backgrounds that just felt like a fantasy book come to life. And I, have watched it a bajillion times since my childhood. I've seen it on the big screen a handful of times. I've obviously collected stuff. Actually, I was kind of hoping I'd have gotten it because I was going to show off. I just got a cool Kong 33 thing that was supposed to have shipped out to me by now. It has not yet. I thought might be cool if I could show it off, but it's not here.
Out of curiosity, how many of us here have seen this film in a theater?
Just us two?
Just us?
Snazzy, not even you?
We don't really live in areas where showings like that happen.
For crying out loud!
You don't even get Fathom events?
No, not to our knowledge.
That's the interesting thing. Right before all the theaters shut down because of COVID, the Fathom event of the original King Kong was the last one I saw before quarantine.
Me too. I saw it in that February, I believe, or March, whenever things started to shut. It's March.
But and I realized that last year in 2023 was Kong's 90th anniversary.
Yeah.
And
Danny Boy over here actually was on the 90th anniversary panel at G-Fest.
I was. I got to hang out with Bob Eggleton and a couple of the cool folks, and we just sat and waxed philosophical for about 15 minutes.
Anyway, so you saw. Let's pick up where you left off.
Yes. I don't have that much else to say. I've seen it 1,000 times. I love it to death. It's a book. It's I have books on it. I have documentaries on it. Like, it's one of those things that if it's Kong 33 related, I'm into it. I love learning about it. It has the single most fascinating behind the scenes story of any film ever. It's up there, maybe right next to Jaws, because Jaws has a good one of those too. But there are a lot of great movies with great stories behind them, and we'll touch on that as we go. But it's a magnificent film that means the absolute world to me, and I just love it to death. And I will die on a hill saying that it's a contender for best film ever made.
Yeah, and I kind of forgot that I left one part out of how I first discovered it. After I watched it a few times, and while I was watching it in my bedroom with my old TV and VHS, while the movie was playing, I try to be like Kong. Because every kid wants to be like a animal or a dinosaur.
Did you try stealing somebody's Barbie doll?
I wouldn't.
You don't have to answer that, man. That's a personal question.
Yeah.
Does he have do you have sisters?
I only have one sister.
Did you try stealing her dolls? And he's like, I'm King Kong.
It was from a long time ago. I couldn't remember, but
okay.
Yeah, I tried to be like Kong, but
let's assume that it happened.
It's funnier that way.
Yeah, well, I kind of act like Kong when I was watching the film, and it's going around and knocking out trees and
you can knock over trees? Are you?
Pretend.
You never told me you were that strong.
I meant pretended to be.
Oh, darn it!
And get this, guys. Like, I think a year ago that my own 3-year-old niece, like, back I mean, like a year ago. I mean, that my one time that my niece came over and we were playing. She's kind of acting like a monkey, and seriously, she's just pretending, acting and playing, act like a monkey. And you know what I said to myself? Like, well, I'll be a monkey's uncle.
That's a good line.
Get it? Because I'm an uncle.
We got it.
That's perfect.
It.
That is perfect. That's excellent.
Yeah,
man, that's cool. I'm gonna have to steal that when my brother eventually has children. I'll have to file that one away. And then
I'm waiting for one of them to act like a monkey, and they'll be acting like crocodiles and cheetahs and everything except a primate.
I'll be sitting there waiting. It's like, how you are 3 years old. How are you doing such a good chinchilla impression? Just give me the gorilla, please. Come on, like every animal that. Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna be.
You're just like, child, I need you to act like a monkey so I can make the obvious joke.
I don't ask for a lot. I just want to make this very obvious joke. Just let me do it. Just please let me do it.
Weird.
Well, we have one person left who hasn't told us how he discovered.
You have 2.
3.
3.
Oh,
never mind.
3.
Sorry.
I meant 2. I mean, I'm sorry. We only had 2 people left who didn't tell us who.
You're ignoring Snazzy again.
I mean, 3 people. I mean,
there we go. We got it. Yeah.
Sorry.
Throw a bone at the old Snazzy.
Let's go with this guy right here. Nathan.
Which okay. I mean, I didn't know. Like, I know you're looking at me, but I don't know what the screen looks like for you. So I'll try to be at least relatively brief here because we got a lot to talk about. I don't know. I don't know exactly when I was first became aware of Kong, but my story is actually pretty similar to Danny's. He was always just ubiquitous to me because of just how prevalent he was in culture. And when I started getting into Godzilla and Kaiju in my early teens, I do. Wow.
What?
Wow.
11 out of 10. That was beautiful.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, that's just.
Oh man, man.
Yeah, no, I did not realize you were that talented, Snazzy. I have learned so much about you in this stream. But anyway, so he was very ubiquitous, and I'm trying to remember the exact timing because I remember I was obsessed, again, like you, Danny, with finding the original 33. It seemed like I could find and watch basically, well, not every other Kong film because some were harder to find than others, mostly because people didn't like them. Looking at you, Lady Kong. Yeah. But anyway, I could find all the other ones. I saw King Kong versus Godzilla pretty early on. I found the 76 remake and watched it. But every single time I'm like, even though I still hadn't seen it, I'm like, something's just not quite clicking, especially with the 76 version. Like, something's just not quite clicking. I need to find the original. I read the dang novelization because it was at my local library, the Lovelace novelization. So I was able to read that before I actually saw the movie. It took forever for me to finally find a copy, because you got to understand, I grew up without cable. I just wasn't like I could just get lucky one night and TCM would have it on and I could just sit down and watch it. I did not have that privilege. So I don't remember exactly how I did it. I do believe it was on VHS. I want to say it was VHS. If it wasn't VHS, it was a DVD copy. I finally found that. I believe it was VHS. And like everybody else has been saying, I sat down and I watched it and I'm like, yes, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I've been wanting. And what else is there to say? I mean, once you see the original King Kong, there's life before Kong and there's life after Kong, basically. I mean, there's no getting around it. this is one of, and this is hyperbolic, I know, but this is truly one of the most magical movies ever produced, because even if you're not into this kind of stuff, there's just something about this one that is just truly transcendent. And I can tell you right now, once this came out, I mean, I made sure to try to get my mitts on a copy because I had to have it for sure. And then I was very happy to get this Blu-ray, a few years ago to complete the collection and get ready for the Film Vault, because that was how I launched the Film Vault, was talking about this movie and all the rest of the official Kong films following. That was my first season. So, the Big Ape holds a very special place in my heart for several reasons.
Yeah, and well, thank you for sharing your memory of you first discovered this film, Nathan. So we only have like 2 people left. Am I correct? Let's start with these guys right here.
Well, we were out on the streets and about to steal an apple, but we got caught. And then this filmmaker comes up to us, and then that was someone else. Oh yeah, you tell it.
Oh, wait. The Snazzy is in fact Andero? What?
You'd be surprised what I hide under this hat.
That got weird.
Nothing you can say, Nate. We'll follow up on that.
I got nothing.
No.
People never do. But anyway. Honestly, it's not too different from the other things. Like, when did we first become aware of King Kong? When did you first become aware of water? I mean, it's always been there. I actually did grow up in a house that had cable, so we got the classic movie channels. So my parents, knowing that they wanted me to have a classical film education, always made sure that when there was a really good one on, and one that wasn't necessarily too heavy, like about war or something like that, they would call me in to check it out. So I don't know exactly when I first saw King Kong. I do know that I've just sort of always had this awareness of him, and that sense of things like all the things he brings to the table: the lost world, the dinosaurs, the tragedy, the unrequited love, all of that stuff. And I think because it was always there, I didn't necessarily appreciate the layers as much until I got much older and had a better understanding of stuff like how visual storytelling works, exposure to the stuff that inspired Kong, like Conan Doyle, Shakespeare, and all that stuff. And of course, once you get into those things, then you look back at the stuff that was always a part of your childhood and you start recognizing all this stuff in there. You're like, oh, so yeah, this really is quite brilliant the way they did this. And so I never really had the life before Kong, life after Kong experience, because my life was always Kong. He was just always there.
That is the line of this live stream. My life has always been Kong. That's a very Carl Denham sort of line right there.
Wow, so that is a great memory you share with us, Ami and Snazzy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and see, wow, and wow, it's been almost 45 minutes already.
This is Kong 33, sir. We are going to 7 hours. We've already been requested.
Oh my gosh.
7 hours.
It's my channel, my live stream. I get to decide when this podcast ends.
That is the right answer. There it is.
So yeah, I mean, I've always loved this 1933 film in black and white, but I also heard there's also a color version of this film.
Sacrilege.
Yeah,
it's not great.
It's not very good.
It was from the early days, right, when they first tried colorizing.
Yeah, it was, and it was Criterion. I don't blame them for trying to do it. And if anybody's gonna do it, Criterion's a good choice to do it. It just, I don't even know if I would say the color that the actual work, the colorization as just a piece of work is necessarily bad. It just, movie's not meant for that. No. I think is the main problem. It's just not meant for color.
It wasn't built for it. It was constructed from the top down. This is one of the most intricately, deeply crafted pieces of cinema ever. This is a piece of craftsmanship, this film.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you have to craft it for the camera. And when your camera doesn't shoot in black and white, you don't craft your movie for color. You craft it for what it's going to shoot, and you make every detail count. You make every single use of like the shapes and the shadows and the lighting. It's all tailored for the visual presentation of color or black and white. And it's like saying, it's the same reason the Oz scenes in Wizard of Oz wouldn't look as good in black and white. The black and white scenes in The Wizard of Oz look gorgeous because that's what they were shot for, that great sepia.
Sepia.
Yeah, and
which is what made the color parts when she gets to Oz just pop. Like, it is just, the color in The Wizard of Oz is just spectacular.
Also a contender for best film ever made.
That's one of my mother's favorite movies. So you want to talk about a movie like I could just like
The Wizard of Oz was my favorite.
It's probably Wizard of Oz because I've seen it so many times.
And I just saw it in theaters like last week.
I did too.
Oh, I forgot it came back.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
They treated my mother to it.
It was real. That's the first time I've ever seen Oz on the big screen, and I was alone in the theater for the first chunk of it. Nobody else showed, and then finally a family or two filed in, and I had a moment of like, okay, humanity has hope. Children are still watching The Wizard of Oz. I can go to sleep happy tonight. Like, that makes me feel better because I was sitting there kind of like.
We should do a podcast episode about The Wizard of Oz someday.
I'm down.
But who knows? And it depends what my podcast episode schedule is.
That's right. But the color Kong, to your point, is a curio worth checking out if you're into this kind of thing. But there's only one way to watch this film definitively, and that's with no color in it. And that's just how it is. Especially those early Turner colorizations are curiosities at best, and if you're really into film, they're an effrontery at worst. They're just like, how could you have done this? But it like those projects will never supplant the artistry of the black and white version. And if you're one of those people that doesn't like black and white movies, then I
feel sorry for you.
I don't want to go there, but
and they did. And they added different colors on the dinosaurs in that version.
They did.
Like the Stegosaurus is blue and the Brontosaurus is yellow and the meat eater, aka the T-Rex, is brownish, reddish color, and that's pretty much I know.
Maybe no one's orange. That's disappointing.
Very. I mean,
still don't know what you are yet.
They had all the options. And they didn't go for the best color, orange. Like they just didn't do it. No. Like that's really insensitive amongst other things. Like, I mean,
incredibly.
I don't know, but it's like maybe that's where the rainbow connection is. Maybe we did find it finally. It's on Colorized Skull Island. There it is.
Yeah, there you go.
There it is. But,
and I wanted to talk about the studio who made Kong and had this RKO.
Yeah.
It's also known as a radio picture. Am I correct?
I'm trying to remind me, Danny, what does RKO stand for? It's radio something.
Oh, for crying out loud. My brain is this is strike two for me tonight.
I was gonna say I'm throwing opportunities to show off how brilliant you are.
It stands for real knockout.
There you go.
Oh man. Retro Kong Oreo. Probably not that. Oh my gosh, what is going on with me tonight?
That sounds sort of delicious, but
I would listen if they put out like King Kong themed Oreo cookies, like as a product tie-in for a MonsterVerse movie or something. Like I'd be down with that. That'd be amazing.
It's an abbreviation. I did not know this. This is new information that was not on my podcast. It stands for Radio Keith Orpheum.
I actually don't think I would have remembered that. I read that 1,000 years ago, and I don't think no wonder I couldn't remember it. that would be why.
And
man,
and I heard like RKO has been around for a long time, even today. I mean,
it's not around anymore.
Aw.
It was around for a while, but
it was around for a hot minute. They made a huge mark on film history. Gone with the Wind. Like they did all kinds of stuff, and ultimately they were dissolved. Most of their IPs were bought out by Turner, and then that was absorbed into Warner Brothers, and some of it.
They went out of business in 1959.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, but they had a great run while it lasted. They made some of cinema's definitive films,
and I heard that, studio was also made some of Walt Disney's earlier animation movies.
They were the distributors behind a handful of early pictures, and they actually did co-produce a couple. Including Song of the South, which is not
everyone's favorite.
That beloved classic that everyone has seen and is readily available to watch. Song of the South. Yeah, that was a
arcade. You be able to ride the log flume at Disney World.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With everyone's favorite rabbit.
That's right. And Bear and Fox and all those guys.
Zippity Doodah, right?
Zippity Doodah.
Yeah.
My oh my.
And sadly their theme ride doesn't exist anymore.
Nope, it's gone. They got rid of Splash Mountain.
Anyway, RKO and King Kong.
Yeah, right. So what I heard before they made King Kong was that RKO was under a budget. They almost lost the studio before Kong was directed or made.
Yeah, it was about to. I'm pretty sure they were about to go into receivership, like not too long before that. I mean, it was when people think of the stock market crash. Well, when they think of the Depression, they think of the stock market crash. But the bottom of the Depression was not 1929; it was the early 30s.
Yeah, because RKO almost went bankrupt, and
like a lot of things, which is what makes the success of Kong extraordinary, because it raked in a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it raked in a ton of money when people could barely afford necessities, but that's how much they love this movie, and they're like, you have to see this. This was must see.
That's the power of escapism for you.
Yeah, because this film saved RKO's productions. It saves their studio because of this film. It's a big success.
And part of the way they saved money on it was that Cooper basically made another movie using a lot of the same sets, The Most Dangerous Game.
Yep. A lot of Kong ended up being as original and wonderful as that film is. A lot of it is recycled from the sets, right? So some of the actors,
the log,
the log, the same log is in Most Dangerous Game. Some of the same forests are in the Most Dangerous.
The wall and the gate were used in a Cecil B. DeMille movie. It was King of Kings, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I could say the wall was used in some films after this film was made.
Yeah, it was used. It was used in Gone with the Wind. I think it was burned down.
No, it was definitely burned down.
Yeah, so I just looked up the top 10 grossing movies of 1933. King Kong is number 9.
Yeah, it was not in it barely cracked the top 10, but it did. It was a big earner. And
how many other movies from that year can you name today? Just off the top
of your head. The Invisible Man.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I can tell you I've only heard of one other one from this one, looking at this list. The rest of them, I have no idea what they are.
the winner for the Academy Award for Best Film that year, I don't think I'd ever heard of it when I looked up the list, because I thought, okay, how did Kong rake in any Oscars? And it's
Nope.
like, nope. Weird to think about. Not that Oscars, dear God, are not the be all end all of how to judge a film's quality. That's a myth.
And
that is silly. But
I gotta say, whenever in the film where they when they oh, were you gonna say something, Nathan?
I think I'm trying to look up what won Best Picture that year.
Okay, so what was I? Oh yeah, so it's what I'm saying. The scene when they finally arrive to Skull Mountain after the fog is clear, and when they found the land and the wall and the mountain that's shaped like a skull, and I couldn't even tell if there's really is a skull shape on the mountain, and that shot was actually filmed on a real life location. They said they used some cutouts and just paste them in, and I don't remember.
It's seamless.
Yeah, and I believe it's somewhere in the south, somewhere in the coast of Los Angeles in California. Is it?
Yep, it wasn't too far from RKO HQ. Because that entire area of California is where so many iconic moments were filmed, especially nature moments where they would need a beach. You got plenty of beaches. You need a forest. You need mountains. You got plenty of those. There's a reason why Hollywood set up camp where it did.
There's an entire Egyptian kingdom from the silent version of the Ten Commandments buried somewhere in the California deserts.
And they still find pieces of it,
Yeah.
Crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Thanks to Mill. The guy was nuts, but it's absolutely fascinating to me. But yeah, there are a couple of locations. Most of Kong was soundstage based, but there were a couple of those great scenes, and that entire area 91 years later is pretty unrecognizable. But it's pretty cool to be able to stand there, especially considering the I want to say most of the grounds where RKO stood at the time, where the sound stages were, where Willis O'Brien plied his trade, and where the jungle sets were built. Most of that is now part of, or at least for a while, it was part of MGM's back lot. And now I think some of it is, and some of it's been destroyed and sold off. I don't recall all of it, but it's completely different.
Wow.
But that little bit of nature still exists that you can go see.
By the way, near as I can tell, the award for outstanding production with the Oscars went to Cavalcade.
Yep, that was it. Thank you. I would not have remembered that if you hadn't looked it up. Cavalcade. How many podcasts are going on right now? Are people talking about Cavalcade?
Unless they're like Uber film buffs, or they're doing one just like a history of the Oscars. I don't know. And
I would watch it.
I'm looking at the rest. I'm looking at the rest of the list. Most of these I have not heard of. At least half of them I have not heard of. Some of them I know of, not because of the films, but because they're based on books, and I know the books.
So speaking of books, I did learn that before the film was released, a few months before that, they actually released a novelization of the film itself.
Oh my word. Oh man.
This right here is the reason for Kong's complicated legal status.
Yes.
Thanks, GLSW Lovelace.
I will tell you right now, the edition of it that I want to get from my personal library is the one that it's from the 70s. It was I think it was around the time that the 76 remake was released. They did a new edition that had he's a famous fantasy art. Was it Frazetta? Yeah, that's the one. The one with the Frazetta cover, because I've seen a picture of the Frazetta cover. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is amazing.
Yeah, the version that's about to come out here soon that Bob Eggleton did the illustrations for is an absolute revelation.
Oh man, I may have to pick that. I may have to pick that one up for those illustrations.
It's hundreds of dollars. It is it's very expensive.
I understand.
Worth it.
It's the most expensive public domain book ever, but.
It might be.
Yeah, it might be. But Danny, as our resident kaiju novelizer, I would love to know if was were film novelizations that common at this point, or was this kind of a first?
It was definitely not a first. There were movie tie-in novelizations. They weren't they weren't frequent. But they did exist. And based on who was doing it, sometimes those books would come, like, still to this day, like, you can go and get a film novelization anywhere from weeks to months sometimes before the movie actually comes out, which is a weird thing. You'd think they'd want to hold off on that. These days, it still happens, weirdly enough, and not as much, but it does happen. But because the novelization of Kong was released months before the film, and so you could, in theory, have gone into the movie having read the book, and you would basically know the entire thing. They're different. They're obviously there are differences, but the differences, I think it's the differences that really make the book absolutely worth reading. If anybody out there has not read the novelization for Kong, it is heavily accessible. And
I was going to say, it's very accessible. I'm trying to remember, the differences are generally pretty small, but they're enough to, again, which something I'd love to talk about at least briefly is the legal status of this. But like the ship has a different name. In the movie, it's the Venture. In the novelization, it's the Wanderer. It's because this was based on an earlier draft of the script.
This was the earlier script, and
it was based on an earlier draft of the script. I'm trying to remember what are some of the other. I know the ship is the one I remember most.
Well, there are additional characters.
Lumpy. Yeah, the chef, because he's in the 05. He's in the 05 movie.
Was that the Chinese guy who?
No,
that's Charlie. Lumpy kind of permutated into Charlie during the scripting to filming process. So Lumpy doesn't end up. Lumpy's not in the movie. There are dinosaur species present in the book that are not on Skull Island, at least seen in the film.
The spider pit sequence is in the novel.
I would love to talk about that.
Largely intact in the book. It's a little bit different than how some of the other descriptions are, just because of how things went. And again, like, Kong went through a very, very interesting scripting and story writing process where they initially had Edgar Wallace work on it. And he was pretty renowned as a mystery novelist at the time. He passed away before he could finish his work. They brought in another writer, James Creelman, to take over. He and Cooper clashed hardcore over things that one felt were important, and then the other person would say, no, it's not. And then one person would say, you're doing too much. And then, Cooper eventually got tired of him, and like,
what should be mentioned is Marion C. Cooper, our producer and co-director on this, is a real life Carl Denham. Like, they have made that abundantly clear. Like, they have said, Carl Denham is based on Marion C. Cooper.
He's based on him.
In fact, Carl Denham is the less exaggerated version of Cooper.
This is
which is the wild part.
Yeah. If you have any edition of this, there is a biography that says that's called "I'm King Kong."
I'm King Kong.
It's a biography of Marion C. Cooper. If you haven't watched it, watch it. You will not believe it, but it's true.
Yeah, there's a biography about
Living
him
Dangerously.
out there. Yeah,
great book.
And the man's life is wild.
And I gotta say, sorry to interrupt, Nathan, but I've never read the book of the novelization.
Oh, it's worth reading. It's totally worth reading.
Yeah, I gotta say, if that book still exists,
it exists, dude. You can go find it easy.
Yeah, if I can find it at my local Barnes and Noble store, I would totally go get it. And hopefully, like, I don't know if this exists, but I was hoping is there an audiobook of it?
I wouldn't be surprised if there is.
There are readings of it that have been done out there.
I can tell you that there's a radio show on the islands, not mine, called the Kaiju Crypt. Apparently they are planning on reading an excerpt for Halloween this year.
This is what I've heard.
There's also, I don't have it right on hand at the moment. I didn't think to get it, but if you look hard enough, there is sort of a short audio drama called The Legend of King Kong. That's basically, it's part of this thing, at least this version I got is part of this thing called the Comic Book Hero Collection. And I think it might have been a Wonderland Records thing originally, because they did a bunch of audio stuff with Superman and Spider-Man and whatnot, but they did one for King Kong, if it's them, which is the movie's original plot, but it's like you're listening to this old sailor recount the story. So it's only about a half hour long, as opposed to the movie's over 100 minutes.
It's 100 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, but that's it's not the audio book, but it is an audio version of King Kong.
Yeah. But the thing about the book, what is most noteworthy about the book, Brendan, is the three of us have been mentioning it, is it fell into the public domain. And if you to help you understand what public domain is, Brendan, this means that the book is not owned by a person or by a company like a studio or a publisher or something like that, because normally, like, if you wanted to, like, say you wanted to make your own Godzilla movie, you would have to get permission from Toho to do it, and you would probably have to pay the money to do it. A lot of money. But with this King Kong novelization, you don't have to. You can read it, you can republish it, and there's nothing anybody can do about it.
Wow.
But you can't do that with the movie. You can't do that with the movie.
Yeah.
Only the novelization. Yeah, in about 5 years.
I know, because due to copyright.
Yeah, due to copyright. So the novelization is not protected under copyright, because that expired before they extended the laws for copyright. It expired in the early 60s. So that's why there are a bunch of quote unquote Kong projects that technically aren't official. Or
just giant gorillas.
Yeah, or they're just giant gorillas that have names. Famously, Nintendo got sued by Universal in the early 80s over Donkey Kong, and it is considered one of the stupidest lawsuits ever filed. Basically, the Universal went nuts, like, how dare you make Donkey Kong, Nintendo, without our permission? You can't call your monkey Kong. Kong can't make a monkey out of me.
Just imagine how the dog toy people must have felt.
So they tried to take them to court. The judge just glanced at the piece of paper, looked at Universal and said, "You got nothing." Next.
But let's not forget the best detail. That same judge was the judge who earlier cited Universal about Kong being in the public domain because of the whole lawsuit with Paramount making their version.
Yes. It's like, hey, Universal, I've seen you try this before. You got nothing.
Well, because back then Universal bought the rights to Kong because they want to make their own theme park attraction.
Well, and then they tried claiming the book so they could get away with it. But so basically, anytime you see any of these, like these quote unquote Kong adaptations, they're technically unofficial. They just say, "Oh, we're using the book." There was a Kong animated series in the late 90s, early 2000s that was trying to ride the coattails of Godzilla the series, where Kong was blue and could merge Ultraman style with a teenage boy, and then they made two musical movies based on it. And what?
Yep.
All big, and they just said, "Oh, we're claiming the novelization." That's why, to be honest, trying to determine what the King Kong canon is a pain in the neck. I swear to you, when I initially did my research for the Film Vault all the way back in 2019, there were, and I looked at the Wikipedia article. Suddenly 3 more movies got added since then because it didn't have these 3 animated movies. And I'm like, why are these here now? As far as I care, they don't count. But apparently people think they count now.
Don't talk about the Mighty Kong like that. Come on. The Mighty Kong.
Oh, what was that, Nathan? What's that?
We can't hear you, sir.
We can't.
You've been muted.
I muted you.
Oh, well, there you go. The mighty Kong.
Wow, you're really man today.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, the novelization, Brendan, is 100% worth reading. 110% worth reading. It's a fun one.
Yeah, maybe I can order it online and maybe do an unboxing video.
Oh, it's on Amazon. You can get it easy. I could send you a link right now.
Yep.
And there's maybe after this podcast.
You can also find a semi-sequel to it in this collection called After King Kong Fell.
Yes.
What's the name of that author again?
Philip Jose Farmer.
That's right, Philip Jose Farmer. Yeah.
It incorporates King Kong into something called the Walt Newton universe, which is like an unofficial shared universe of different, mostly books, but also a few movies here and there. And King Kong is one of the things in here. It also states that, according to this story, two characters who were in the crowd surrounding Kong were Doc Savage and the Shadow. And of course, many years later, Doc Savage Skull Island would open with practically that same scene described in the book, in the short story, I mean. Perfect. With Doc Savage going there saying, like, wait a minute, you got to let me through. I'm a really important person. I know this creature. He goes through and they're like, so what is this thing, Doc? And he's like, this is Kong. I met him already. And, the rest of the story is basically a prequel to every Doc Savage story and King Kong.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. Yeah, I actually was contacted by, and if anybody listening or watching to this, you're not allowed to steal this. I will sue you. But I was commissioned by Wild Hunt Press to write some short stories for them, and one of them that they wanted me to do, they said it would have been it was a great ape versus dragon, and I said, can I use King Kong? It's like, you could, but not for this one, because we know people will just root for King Kong, and then when you write the stories, you're not supposed to really have a predetermined winner in mind. So I'm like, but I said, but if you do want to write a King Kong versus dragon story, we would be more than happy to have it. I'm like, that's what I'm doing. I don't know.
And that got adapted into Ape versus Monster, right? By the Asylum.
What? I'm sorry, sir, but around here on Monster Island, we kick Asylum. Okay, we just no.
It's a good thing we're not on Monster Island.
Yeah,
we can say whatever we want.
Yeah.
Well, we're on Skull Island, and
there you go.
And guys, I want to talk about what one of you guys been talking about. What was in the novelization, it as wasn't in the film, is the spider pits.
Yeah.
Like I said, like I hate spiders. I'm terrified of them.
Arachnophobic.
Yeah, I mean,
how do you watch Son of Godzilla?
I mean, I'm still well, not that kind of. Come on,
we know.
It's weird. I'm also like, I don't mind little spiders, but like the big ones freak me out.
Tarantulas.
Yeah, Kumonga doesn't bother me either.
Well, and Danny, the last time we hung out, you punched a spider in the face.
I did punch a spider in the face.
And I think you told him that he will see Kumonga in hell, if I remember.
Listen, I suffered several massive concussions after falling to the ground after that. So I've got very few memories of what I actually said. Whatever I said was great. Throw it all on t-shirts. No memory.
I can say that scene should have been added in the film, but they thought it was like too dark and scary. I mean,
not at all.
I was going to say, here's the thing: the spider pit sequence is practically a legend at this point, and it's not a legend in that it never would have existed. Legend in just how just crazy all the story around it is, because some claim it was filmed. Some people claim when they first saw the movie that it was in the movie. I think it was the Ray Bradbury, I think, famously said when he saw it as a kid, he claimed that he saw the spider pit sequence, but it's Ray Bradbury, he could be misremembering. Some people say it was cut for time. Some people said it was cut because it was too intense and scary. More likely, I think the most likely reason for it was that Marion C. Cooper cut it for time and pacing, because he said it just slowed the whole movie down.
Yeah, and
it slowed it down. He said it stopped the movie.
Yeah.
And they said that that footage and that scene was lost forever. I mean,
but that's why people question whether or not it actually was ever filmed in the first place. Not whether, let alone that people actually saw it in very early screenings.
There are a few photos.
There are a few photos.
Yeah, and
it was intended to be made.
Yeah, and they actually Peter Jackson, who did the 2005 remake. I mean, he actually recreated the spider pit scene for the scene.
Wild.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, and he actually did like the 33 picture quality style to it. He's used some of the
everything. And
because Peter Jackson is a super fan,
and having to recreate stuff like what do we do this big bug with tentacles?
Yeah, all they really had for a couple of those creatures, all they really had to do was the script, which was fascinating because scripts, and it actually helped them because film history here, scripts for early talking pictures were often written as both scripts and shot lists. And so the King Kong script, that had that version that had that scene in it, actually had camera angles and technical details that described how it was shot. And so Peter Jackson was able to take that and basically use it as a Bible and to copy it. But some of the creatures were never shown. The set photos, which were done for presumably for like lighting purposes and maybe promotional stuff, just to see how the puppets looked, showed 2 or 3 creatures. And then the script described a few, and then there's maybe one other creature that had some concept art done for it. But
the one concept art showing the 2 guys on the rock fighting off a giant lizard and a giant crab.
Yeah.
Yes.
I gotta say, I love the sound effect of the giant crab, like.
Yeah. What was it? There was a scorpion in it too, right? Because supposedly that prop was used in the 50s, right?
That's a weird tentacle monster thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
it has a
I'm trying to remember what
thing that comes up, but
okay, I was just trying to remember what was its connection to Black Scorpion then? Because I thought that like supposedly there was. So I believe that one of the props was that
there is a fighter in Black Scorpion, but I don't think it's the same.
There are a couple of creatures in Black Scorpion, a giant 4-legged mite-like creature, and then a kind of inchworm that were supposedly repurposed by Pete Peterson and Willis O'Brien for that film using armatures. They didn't use the original bodies; they deteriorated. But there are a handful of movies that were shot at the time at RKO where those puppets were used in the background. You can actually, I don't remember the names of all the films off the top of my head, but there are some movies where they had, the Styracosaur and Kong himself and some of the dinosaurs showed up as props in a movie warehouse for a scene that they shot. And if you look, you can see the 2-legged lizard that is in the final film. And you can see the spider and a couple of other creatures that they built just kind of hanging on the wall as decorations. It's
right. Yeah. But like we were saying, Peter Jackson recreated it.
It's beautiful, and
it's included on this Blu-ray and its DVD equivalent as a special feature. They specifically said, please don't put this in the movie, because Jackson was, because this is one of the things I really respect about Jackson is Jackson said, I'm a super fan, I'm going to make this exist and do it in a way that's pretty close to how they probably would have done it back in the 30s, but I don't want it put in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, they instead they just added on the special feature selection.
It's a special feature,
and also
really
the one thing you left out. I mean, when they're after you run from the Brachiosaurus, I mean, they did run into a Styracosaurus in that part, and then that Styracosaurus was actually used from Son of Kong.
Yeah, it got into Son of Kong. Yeah, there were that failed film that led to this.
And in the recreation, it's voiced by Fay Ray herself.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing! I know
it's so great. And then And then obviously Peter Jackson made his own version of the Spider Pit in his remake, and he wanted to make sure he could have it, so he put a plot point in there.
And Amin, I'm glad you brought this up. Let's talk about the beauty who charmed the bees herself,
who killed the bees?
Andero, who's played by the original Andero herself, Fay Wray.
Fay Wray, the first Scream Queen, the original Scream Queen.
Yep. She's always remembered as the original Andero from the original King Kong.
Yeah.
I mean, how many other movies was she in?
Lots.
She will be remembered forever for King Kong.
Yeah, and they actually it shows her grave where they buried her. It's like after she passed away. They actually have her tombstone where she buried. They was actually behind Paramount Studios.
Which she went everywhere. In 1933 alone, she made 6 films, which is impressive. She made Kong. One of my another film, since we're talking about 1933 films, a film I didn't mention before was Michael Curtiz's Mystery of the Wax Museum, which was made over at Warner, which is a early 2-color Technicolor horror film with Lionel Atwill. Absolutely great movie. And she's in that film, and she plays, if anybody out there is more familiar with the Vincent Price House of Wax version, the story of the tortured wax artist who has his hands burned, and he starts stealing corpses to rebuild his wax museum years later, and he sees a beautiful woman, and he's like, that's my Marie Antoinette model. She looks just like the model I sculpted that got destroyed. And so he wants to get her. I almost said Andero. Fay Wray plays the woman who he looks at, and he says she looks like the sculpture I made of Marie Antoinette, and he wants her for the museum. So she's great in that film too.
Yeah. According to IMDb, she has 126 credits. I don't know if those. I think that's all actress credits right there.
There's a play based on her life as well. That's actually
And it says that she is best known for King Kong, obviously, The Most Dangerous Game, which we brought up a few times. The Mystery of the Wax Museum, just like you brought up, Danny, and also something called Dr. X.
Yeah, she's in Dr. X.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot about Dr. X. Darn it.
Where they begin filming the original King Kong film, I mean, they had to create a filming schedule for Fay Wray because she was so busy making other films that she'd be starred in. So they had to create a schedule where they're going to film her.
The way
she's practically the star in this.
Yeah, the way she said it, she'd like finish filming something for The Most Dangerous Game, and then after do a different set, throw on a blonde wig, and be ready for Kong.
Yeah, I was going to say, Brendan, did you know that she's not actually blonde? She's brunette. She had to wear a blonde wig for this movie, which is just wild to me.
Yeah, that blonde hair was actually a wig. It
was a wig. And what's funny is, I think it was Cooper, right? Cooper was the one who promised her that she would make a movie alongside the tallest, darkest man in Hollywood. And she's like, I think she said she was expecting Cary Grant.
She was
expecting Cary Grant, and she showed up and was like, monkey.
And it's monkey time. But yeah, as Omni was saying, she chose the wig. She went to the wig shop, chose the wig, and it was her idea because, what's going to stand out more when you're in the hand of a giant dark-haired animal, brunette hair or blonde. So she went
I was going to say blondes are scarce around here.
Yeah, I was going to say it leads to one of the best lines of the movie from Carl Denham.
Blondes are scarce
around here.
Scarce.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
The golden woman.
I'm going out to get a girl for my picture.
Because the public must have a pretty face.
The public must have a pretty face.
Yeah,
must have a pretty face. He talks like my friend Raymond.
A little bit. He's oh my gosh.
Do we want to talk about the rest of the cast, or we're talking about Andero? She's an icon. Let's be honest. Andero, Fay Wray is an icon. mean, what do you say that hasn't been said? Although I would say all of us in this call are very positive toward Fay Wray and Darrow, there are some people that kind of hate her, and it drives me insane because I keep finding more and more essays complaining about her.
Whatever.
I mean,
yeah, whatever.
I mean, in the film, and she just screams at Kong. And,
she screams so much.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah.
Listen, man, if you as the only other confirmed blonde in this chat, Nate, you would absolutely like, come on, like we would all be a little spooked if an actual animal that's like, we would all be like, we can all sit here and say, yeah, that'd be cool. I'd ask for his autograph. I'd ask him to tea.
Your job now, dear viewers, is to make fan art of Queen Kong carrying around Nate.
Oh God, I am definitely not going to do a podcast episode of Queen Kong.
He didn't say make a podcast. He said make fan art.
You could do it.
I mean, yeah, you could do the fan art. Don't get me started. I haven't seen
Queen Kong. I can do a fan art of Queen Kong, but I'm not going to do a podcast episode about Queen Kong.
I don't blame you.
That film is terrible.
Well, yeah.
It could have been. What's frustrating about Queen Kong is that it could have been good. It could have been good.
Yeah, it's a musical comedy.
Can you imagine if they'd actually gotten Monty Python to write for it?
Oh, good Lord, it would have been gold.
Could you imagine? Because they're really trying in a couple of those moments. They're trying to be Monty Python, and it's like, guys.
They're trying to be Monty Python so bad. But anyway, so yeah, and Darrow, icon, amazing. But the whole cast in this movie is amazing.
I also got to let them. I mean, I know this is the only King Kong film that Anne always screams at, but the other King Kong films and remakes, the other Anne Darrow or Dwan characters don't scream at him, and
not as much.
Yeah,
they
because
still scream, just not as much.
Yeah.
Although I'm not the biggest fan of Dwan, she's kind of a ditz.
Wow.
What? Don't you say that? Dwan is my favorite.
We gotta get some Jessica Lange love in here. Come on, a little bit.
I have nothing against Jessica Lange. I just don't like Dwan.
I know. I'm teasing you. I do like that a lot of the feature adaptations of the story and just other Kong stories opened the door for the leading ladies to have a little bit more empathy for Kong and try to they connect with them a little bit more.
And you know who's responsible for that?
100%. It's Linda Miller.
I was going to say, Brendan talked to her on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
she paved the way. You could make an argument for what is her name in Son of Kong?
Helen Mack's character.
Helen Mack. You could make an argument for that, but Kiko is not trying to kidnap her. He's a big baby. He's a big baby. She becomes basically his mother in that movie. It's little. That's a little different.
Like excluding that, like poor Fumiko in King Kong versus Godzilla is not having it. She's not having any of it.
But hey, it's Mie Hama. Let's be honest. You know, normally Kong is a not so gentleman who prefers blondes, but he sees Mie Hama. He's like, you know what?
Exceptions.
I can make an exception.
Exceptions to be made. But Linda really was the first one, and then that paved the way for Jessica Lange, and then onwards, into the rest of the story. And the current Kong has a very empathetic connection between Kong and little Gia.
Oh, I love.
Yeah, he actually rejected the only blonde he interacted with, but that was Brie Larson. So
yeah,
ouch, poor Brie. But it's fascinating to see that, and there is not a lot of that. I mean, well, let me rephrase that. There's literally none of that in the original Kong. Fay Wray is 100% terrified for the whole film. But to my point, we'd all be a little spooked if an animal that big picked us up, an animal that has been built up in our brains as it wants to eat us. I've been tied to this thing, and this thing is going to come out of the woods, and it's going to pluck me from the podium, and it's gonna eat me, and that's how I'm going to go out. And if I don't, the freaking T-Rex is gonna get me, or Allosaurus.
Well, no, I don't think they didn't know about the dinosaurs.
No, they didn't. But eventually, a dinosaur tried to eat her, and she probably thought for a minute in that moment that.
But Kong saved her from the dinosaurs. That's the funny. She's still screaming.
Yeah,
and it never occurs to you. It's like, The big ape is keeping me safe from the things that definitely want to eat me.
And Nathan, and sorry for interrupting you, and sorry I mute you, but I also, I forgot to left one thing. I mean, I know that Fay Ray like passed away, like I don't know what year she passed away on, like either
2003.
2003. I thought
because they were planning to have her in the Peter Jackson remake, but she passed away before they could film it.
Yeah, I was gonna say she did visit the set. I know that.
Well, they went to visit her. She actually
they went to visit her. That's right.
She went to live in New York in her final years, and she was in her late 90s, I believe, at the time. And during a visit to New York for location scouting and to get some of the actors up on the Empire State Building, they had a moment or a couple of days where they met with her, and then Peter Jackson got to spend some time with her as well. There were actually plans to include a Fay Ray cameo as far back as several previous attempts by Universal to make the film. The 70s version that they were thinking about doing was supposed to have her. The Peter Jackson 96 version was supposed to have her do that. And then they wanted to follow through on that for what ultimately became the 2005 version. And it would have been amazing to see her come out and say that line.
You know what would have been kind of funny if they had pulled a Titanic and they had Fay Ray play old Anne, like telling the story to like her grandkids or something.
That's kind of an awesome idea.
That would have been amazing. So she's old Naomi Watts.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know, like I haven't watched the whole end of the credits of the 2005 King Kong. I don't, and believe if I'm wrong, did they added in a memory of Fay Ray after the end of the credits?
I believe so. That's ringing a bell. Because I know that the film is dedicated to the cast and crew of the original Kong, 100%. Because she's included in that.
Because I don't watch the full end credits of ended films that much.
By that point, everyone's bladder is full.
Yeah,
especially if Peter Jackson made it, right?
Yeah. Well, new Peter Jackson, old Peter.
It's worth it for me. It's I like to leave the credits on when I watch my films, and I love that at the end of the Peter Jackson version there is an in memoriam, and it actually does end with some of Max Steiner's music at the very end of the credits, which is a lovely little tribute.
We'll talk about that at some point.
Oh, we should, but I would like
some cast.
But Brendan, okay, this is your show. Can we talk about the rest of the cast?
I was just about to get to that. I was just gonna say let's get to the rest of the cast. I mean, about Carl Dedham and
Robert Armstrong.
Yep, and Skipper and as Captain Englehorn. I mean,
yeah, actually, something that should be mentioned. This movie was actually kind of progressive in its time because it was one of the first movies that credited a black actor at the beginning of the movie with Noble Johnson, who plays the native chief. That's a detail that I think people kind of overlook, and then they also overlook the fact that Noble Johnson plays the native chief as a very, very strong and authoritative figure in this. He is far from a weak stereotype.
Noble Johnson was one of the first actors of color in Hollywood history to break ground like that. I believe he is the first, not for Kong, but he was the first black man to be credited in a film. And he did his life story is way too much to get into here, but look up some of the amazing things he did for the cause of equal rights in films. Amazing dude.
And believe me, I think this was also the first film that ever had a jungle native language. Like they speak in a different language.
Oh yeah. Bala means friend. Bala. Yeah. But the thing that
Kong.
The thing that does seem a little bit confusing though is Noble Johnson gets credited, but they don't credit Charlie in this, but they credit him in but they credit him in Son of Kong, which is weird.
He's in Son. Well, okay. I was about to say he's in Son of Kong a lot more. That is not an excuse for not crediting him.
I was gonna say he's arguably he's in it as much, if not more, than Noble Johnson.
No, he is, and he's a funny character too. In both.
I do think he's better in Son of Kong because he's more of a central figure, and he's wisecracking, and
he's funny.
He's a funny dude. I like him.
And the whole cast of this thing. I mean, we touched on it briefly on how Robert Armstrong was basically hired to play Carl Denham, not Carl.
I mean, Mary C. Cooper.
Mary C. Cooper.
He was hired to play Carl Denham, of course.
and I think I heard that
I had a stroke at work last night. I'm not.
And sorry to interrupt, but I think, believe me if I'm correct, I mean, I think Mary C. Cooper, along with his partner, they were actually was in this film too on the plane scene where they trying to take down King Kong.
Yes, he was. It was Mary C. Cooper and Schoedsack. Yeah.
Yep.
The other director. They were because they're. Mary C. Cooper's thinking was, well, we made this SOB. We should kill him.
He's our fault. We got to take him down.
And he was actually was a pilot.
In World War I,
he was a pilot,
and then he was a pilot again in World War II.
Part of the Flying Tiger.
He got shot down both times. And the second time he ended up in a freaking camp, and he escaped. Like the guy, seriously, it's too much to get into here. But as Omni was alluding to earlier, this dude's life story is no joke.
Can we get an adventure miniseries based around the life of Marion C. Cooper?
It's waiting to happen. And Apple TV Plus, you listening? Netflix, I'm serious.
No, not Netflix. I don't trust Netflix with this.
That's fair. They do a season and then cancel it before they get.
There's a lot of reasons I don't trust Netflix with it, but mostly because their attempts at doing anything related to history are suspect.
I would say there are a couple of other. I don't know. It's too much to get.
Apple TV Plus, I think, might be the place to go.
That's kind of why I mentioned.
I never seen the Monsterverse TV series on Apple TV, but I have to give that series a try.
You should.
Yeah. You should. So Robert Armstrong as Denham. And then we have Bruce Cabot as John Jack Driscoll. I think, if I remember correctly, he was the most inexperienced member of the cast.
He was
and it kind of shows a little bit.
Hey, I think I love you.
I think that line's adorable. I don't know. He's just such a big lug. I love him.
But
Denham called it. It's like, oh, a tough egg like you gets a look at a pretty face and suddenly turns soft.
The little fellas lick them.
For as much as Denham was based on Cooper, Jack was based on Schoedsack.
Yeah.
He even even down to the point of not liking to bring along a woman while they're off trying to work because they had that problem on Grants.
I would just like to point out that as much as people rag on the Fay Ray and Darrow, she handles herself remarkably well. As they call out, "You're going to be the only woman on the ship." Notice how all of the boys on that ship respect her. Mm-hmm. Nobody messes with Anne. I think that's partly because Denham will kick any of their butts if they do. But
but she also
Rhino, he'll take any of them.
That's a great line too. So cameraman got scared. He couldn't take the Rhino that was charging at him. Fool! I was right there with the rifle.
You didn't trust me to get the rifle Rhino before I got him.
And I gotta say that Arnold Armstrong, he does an amazing job playing as Carl Denham.
He's amazing.
Yeah, he'll always be remembered as the original Carl Denham. And I mean, in the film, and he's always wants to make motion pictures. I mean. And I just noticed when in the film, when he says he's going out to get a girl for his picture, I mean, and when he started filming on the ship and on the island for some parts, I always wondered myself, what movie is he making? What was the title of it?
I think my theory is that he's just like, I'm just going to go to an exotic location, film stuff, and just make a movie out of it.
Mm-hmm.
We
kind of like what Denham did.
Basically, yeah. We kind of have an idea that he has a Beauty and the Beast story in mind. The idea of his picture is that the Beast could lick the world, but he got soft. The little fellas licked him.
Well, here's the thing: he's going out to make King Kong. King Kong is a movie about making King Kong.
Yeah,
it's a very meta movie.
So wait. So are you saying that this is a metatextual film here?
Yes.
Listen,
it's a movie. Wall is broken.
It's a movie about it's a movie about making movies that might be the movie that is the movie made by people who made the movie about themselves with characters in the movie reflecting themselves outside the movie in the movie.
Starring the dude playing the dude pretended to be a dude.
And he knows
as another dude.
I was gonna make an Inception reference, but Danny, can you write that essay and tell all the other King Kong essayists what fools they are, please?
And I am sorry to interrupt, but speaking of Beauty and the Beast, I mean, the King Kong wasn't actually the original title choice for it. They were suggesting calling the title The Beast.
Yep. That was
so generic.
That was one of a handful of titles. The original bits and pieces and ideas that Cooper jotted down. Goodbye, Nate. Were good. Nathan, can you hear us?
Yes, sorry. Okay. Just had to step away for a second.
Oh, you're okay.
He died and turned into a red-eyed zombie for a moment.
Screw that guy. I used to be my roommate. Why is his picture there?
You lead a fascinating life, Marchand. Anyway, the original ideas were jotted down under the notes under a kind of the terror gorilla, giant terror gorilla idea. It became the Beast. At one point, the Creelman draft was called the Eighth Wonder. Then it was Kong the Eighth One. It went through a couple of different permutations. It was just Kong at one point, and then it was King Kong. So they got to it, but they were really going for that Beauty and the Beast thing, and it was just the Beast for a hot minute. Definitely would not have captured people's attention as much. A lot of films in the 20s and early 30s were a "the" and then a single word. Very enigmatic and interesting, but King Kong, they can't beat it. You got to go see what's that. What the heck is that about? I got to go see what that is. That's insane.
Well, they didn't. Here's the thing that I find interesting about the movie is the movie plays up the mystery and anticipation of what is Kong for 40 minutes. And then we see him. The advertising does not hide it. You're going into it knowing what he is.
Just enough. But
and yet when you see him for the first time, it's still stunning.
Yes, so
beautiful. It's beautiful.
I wanted to talk about the big ape himself, the figures.
Oh, the stop motion. Willis O'Brien, one of the most underappreciated geniuses in film history. That man.
I gotta say, that guy is so a genius with stop motion figures of dinosaurs and apes.
I mean, he taught Harryhausen how to do it.
He did, literally.
And Harryhausen arguably perfected his art.
I would say so. As majestic as the work of O'Brien was, and other people at the time who were experimenting with this stuff, like George Powell and I mentioned Pete Peterson earlier. I mean, obviously Harryhausen is the best there was and ever will be at this stuff. But the grandfather of it all was Willis O'Brien, who go ahead.
Because he was basically making it up. He was
the
innovator.
Yeah.
But before we talk about more about him, I want to talk about the Kong himself of the figure. I mean, we all know that Kong's fur was actually made out of rabbit fur.
Fur, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hear they actually used 3 figures of Kong.
At least
3 armatures. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
No one knows the exact number, I think.
Yeah, but there were different ones that were different sizes depending on the shot they had to do.
And only one survives today, and it's owned by a guy who's made his career not only collecting movie memorabilia but also being a gorilla.
It's true. There are actually, believe it or not, 2 Kong armatures in existence to this day. A handful of years ago, a second one was found, and guess who bought it? Peter Jackson.
Wow.
He owns, as according to what he was able to piece together with his historical research, he thinks he has long face. Which would mean that the one that Bob has is either the third one or it's the short face puppet that was confirmed. If you watch the film, for anybody who doesn't know what the heck I'm talking about, Kong, the figure, the puppet, was constructed through a building up process. It wasn't the Kong did not come out of a mold. Kong was built up layer by layer, a metal armature, which was hand machined and cut piece by amazing. And then on top of that, they had layers of cotton tied with string to form the muscle definition. They used a combination of like this dental dam material, like all this stuff. And they shaped the muscles. They put a bladder in his stomach so that they could frame by frame make him breathe. Fascinating. And then on top of that went the rabbit fur. And his face was sculpted in so many different ways, because you have oily hands touching the face to make the stop motion, the brows moved, the lips snarled, the jaw opened and closed. And then when you combine all that oily hand stuff from the animators and you combine that with the hot studio lights, just the wear and tear of the latex rubber deteriorating, they would have to resculpt Kong's face every few days. And so if you pay attention, you can tell which puppets are which, and you can pay attention to when they resculpted the face, because Kong has 2 distinct face shapes and more than that, distinct facial designs in the film. The long face puppet is the one, it's in a handful of some of the more iconic scenes. It shakes the guys off the log.
I think they say he fights the T-Rex, right?
He fights the T-Rex.
Yep.
The short face, I believe, is used for some of the cave sequences, and
I think they used that for the attack of the village.
Yes, there are some shots of short face in there, and then you have the bigger puppet, as Nate was saying. The scale of Kong changes in the film. He's roughly 1 inch per foot.
I think he's about 20 feet tall on 20 feet tall on Skull Island, but he's closer to 25 in New York.
Yes. The puppets were built in 18-inch and 24-inch scales, and that equates to real world footage when they composited the puppet in or built the miniature set. So you have an 18-foot tall Kong on Skull Island and a 24-inch Kong in New York, because they just added a few extra inches to make him look bigger and more imposing in the city. It's not consistent, but that wasn't what they were going for. They were going for drama, sensationalism, and drama. That's right. It's a fantasy.
Yeah, and they did use some animatronics. They used a hand from the crane. Yeah, they use a hand that's attached to a crane, and then the animatronic face close up.
Yep.
It was like
there are so many special effects techniques just used throughout this whole movie. The cave sequence is noteworthy because I believe there is one shot that I think technically uses like 4 different techniques in it.
Well,
you have the stop motion.
I just watched the behind the scenes. I believe they said it's a painted backdrop, real water, foreground elements for the boiling mud with steam.
Yep.
2 rear projected images, one of Faye and one of Jack, and the stop motion for Kong and the elasmosaur snake thing.
Yeah.
And
7 or 8 layers.
All of it overlaid, and even today, some of the best special effects artists will look at it and go, how in the heck did they do that?
Yep. Yeah, it's astonishing. And one of the things that can't be overemphasized is how much of Kong is Willis O'Brien, because he poured himself into this armature and animating him, and a lot of the characterization of Kong is coming from O'Brien, because O'Brien because he was animating Kong, he basically was an actor, because he's the one who determined all, like the way Kong fights the T-Rex. He's literally doing wrestling moves and boxing because that was the kind of stuff that O'Brien was into when he was a young man.
He was a boxer in his youth. Yeah. So
Yeah.
he had experience. If you watch some of those, like Kong does an actual boxing sucker punch on the T-Rex at one point.
Or in the aforementioned cave sequence we were just talking about, Kong sets Anne up on the little ledge and then he turns away, which allows the creature to come towards her. But what's he turning away for? He's going to pick up a flower for her.
Yeah, which was a bit of humor that O'Brien was putting in there. You blink and you miss it. But it's just so funny. He's actually going to get a flower, and then he has to go fight the snake thing.
Yeah,
it is so remarkable. And
one time he tries to genuinely be romantic.
Yeah, the one time he tries, and I mean, can we just all agree that the iconic truly iconic Kong versus I don't know if you want to say T-Rex, meat eater, Allosaurus.
Yeah, I can say let's get to the meat eater, aka
I was going to say
Rex or Allosaurus.
I was going to say, can we agree that this is the first kaiju fight?
Yeah, this kind of is a first kaiju fight.
Considering that we now know, considering that the identity of the creature is so ambiguous that we're now just calling it the meat eater, and considering Kong is a made-up species of primate, I would say so.
Yeah, I also forgot to mention, that the sound effect of Kong's war was actually a mix of a lion and a tiger's war.
That makes sense.
And again, that was another new method they had come up with just for this movie.
Yep.
And And do you want to know what the sound effect for the meat eaters is?
I seem to recall, but tell us anyway.
Yes.
Well, when you watch the film, he sounds like he's screeching, like yeah. And that's the sound effect was actually came from a panther.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that makes sense. That's why it has a hissing quality to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
The sound design for Kong is incredibly revolutionary. One of the most unsung heroes behind that film was Murray Spivak, the sound designer. There was no, and it's crazy to think about now, because you can go online and find huge repositories of sounds that are just there, but in the 1930s, there was no catalog or archive or library of pre-existing sound effects.
Because sound was brand new at the time.
Exactly. I mean, movies had just learned to talk a few years earlier. There's no need for any of that. So
and some of them were still being re-released as silent movies because not every theater was equipped for sound.
Yeah, exactly. It was insane. And so Spivak went out to zoos and recorded all these animals. He did some of the sound effects were actually him. The chest thumping was him tapping. He had a microphone up against his assistant and he just tapped them on the shoulder. And then the grunts that he does when he's holding Anne, that was his voice. He just got close to the mic and grunted, and that was him. And he's
really? I thought it was you. Because you I was gonna say.
Well, Spivak is actually voicing him right now.
Oh, that's
and
ladies.
And I did look. I tried doing research of different sound effects from the other dinosaurs, like the Stegosaurus and the Brontosaurus and the Pterodactyl, but there's no research of what their sounds were from.
I think there's a little info on that in the oh my gosh, who wrote that book? The Great History of King Kong book, the one from 2005. You know what I'm talking about.
Let's see, because I brought most of my research library with me here. So let me see.
Morgan.
Ray Morgan.
Morton, not Morgan.
Ray Morton.
Ray Morton.
Right. Ray Morton. Oh no. And there goes a small disaster here. Guys, keep talking. I need to fix something. Hold on.
Goodbye. This is what happens when you try to research, man. So yeah, the sound effects are great. The sound effects are amazing. And that goes for just about everything. What's up?
And I always like the fight scene of the Kong and the Allosaurus and the meat eater, and
I mean, because they're really throwing each other around. It's not like they're just staying on the ground exchanging blows or something. They're flipping and jumping, and I mean that is not easy. you go frame by frame, maybe you can see some of the sticks that they use to support them.
You can. You can.
And like, and when it's actually in motion, you don't really see it because it's going by so quickly.
Yeah, you have to know what you're looking for to spot it.
And what I know, because how this dinosaur, the Allosaurus or the T-Rex, changed its name to meat eater. I mean, because they already gave this character named the meat eater that was actually in the novelization that I heard of.
And so apparently that is his now official name, which is just kind of funny because that's the only name reference that anyone can find.
Yeah, I gotta say that. I mean, in the film, I know the Stegosaurus and the Brontosaurus look, there are like real dinosaurs, but this one doesn't look like a T-Rex at all or a real dinosaur at all.
It was realistic as dinosaurs were understood at the time.
Yeah, because
that's the thing. Who was
Charles
I
Arnott.
keep forget what Charles Arnott, who made probably the most iconic paleo art of all time. And people still, his renditions are still what come to most people's minds when they think of dinosaurs. So he was a big inspiration for what we saw in this. A lot of it's considered inaccurate anymore, but still.
Yeah, I mean, take a look at it. Take a look at. I mean, I mean, if you look at natural history museums, if you've been to one, I mean, if you look at the dinosaur's bones, like especially the T-Rex, it's just like straight, and it sticks its tail off the ground, and then I know back then they used some T-Rex bones to make them stand up straight, and this one, but this one has his tail on the ground, like slid around like a snake and everything.
I love that part where, and I can't imagine what animating that must have been like, where he's just like doing, it has like a wave to how the tail wags, and it's like, it's an angry cat. That's what that is. That is an angry cat.
Yeah,
this was back when
and you realize that that it has 3 claws on its hands instead of 2.
Yeah. You ain't no T-Rex.
Yeah. But hey, just like I said on my episode, for this film, all the way back at episode 2, people get hung up on whether or not Skull Island is realistic in this movie. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be mythic.
Are people
the ecology, I get it. The ecology of Skull Island makes no sense in this movie, but it doesn't have to.
Yeah, I mean, that's
nonsense. Like that completely defeats the purpose of a fantasy pulp story. Like who cares? If you're thinking about it that hard, this might not be the movie for you. Just go watch paint dry.
And also,
you would be.
Sorry for interrupt. I mean, I also I forgot to mention about the dinosaurs. I mean, I think they made a few mistakes with the dinosaur species. I mean, some of them were herbivores, and no, the meat eater is a meat eater, and also the scene when the Stegosaurus appeared, and when he saw the group gang trying to find in, and he's charging after them, right towards them, and
I'm willing to believe that. That's the thing. Just because he's an herbivore doesn't mean he's not going to get agitated and protect his territory.
Hippopotami are herbivores. They're some of the biggest jerks in the animal kingdom.
They kill more people in Africa than any other animal.
And they do it in the worst way you can imagine.
Yeah, don't get near them. You get near the lakes where they're hanging out, they will chomp you in half, literally.
Yeah, and also I know, like I said,
hungry hippos.
And I know, like I said earlier, that they added three fingers on the meat eater's hands instead of 2 because it's T-Rex. I mean, but the Stegosaurus, I know at the end of his tail he has like 4.
Agonizer.
Yeah,
thanks, Gary.
Yeah, it's like 4 horns on the back at the edge of his tail, but it has a lot more.
Yeah, he's extra spiky. He's been tagamized all the way up his tail.
I was gonna say,
and also It also can rattle like a rattlesnake.
Who cares?
I love the death
well, let's be honest, those are death twitches, but
yeah, the twitch of the death stegosaur. Like he's not the
twitch of the death stegosaur.
I'm gonna make a movie called Twitch of the Thagomizer, and y'all are it's gonna be great.
That sounds more like a black metal album.
I was gonna say Twitch of the Death Stegosaur is somebody's metal album.
No. Death by Thagomizer. That's my band in high school, right there.
My high school band.
There's actually is a band called Primal Tyrant that does songs about killer dinosaurs. I'm amazed they haven't done that yet.
They need to.
They do.
And also, apologies to Gary Larson, of course.
Yeah.
And also, I forgot to left out one part of the fight scene of the meat eater and Kong. I mean, also, I love the end of the fight scene when Kong rips the
his iconic finisher.
Yeah, I mean, it actually showed blood coming out of the
and that comes back in a lot of future Kong movies. It's in King Kong Escapes. It's in there's a variation of it in the 76 remake. It's in the Peter Jackson version. It gets homaged in Skull Island.
Yeah,
Can I just say I think that fight was rigged?
And also,
man,
it just blew my mind when he was about to rip his jaw for the final time all the way. He's like, you could actually hear some cracking sound. It's almost like his skull is breaking.
Yep. And my favorite part of the whole thing, and I think this is a Willis thing, Willis O'Brien thing, is that after he's done, he plays with the jaw.
Yeah. It's almost like he's making sure that it is dead. Like,
are you dead? Are you dead? You're dead? I win.
Yeah, and he does this.
He opens it a couple times, shakes it a little bit. And they basically just drew over that in CG for the 2005
and
version.
Also,
I love that. They did great.
And also, he did it like a third time before he fought the Pteranodon. He went to his when he went outside of his cave lair. I mean, he was on the mountain. He just did this. Yeah. It was like it's almost calling out.
But if you want to talk about dinosaur inaccuracies, we have the world's most aggressive brontosaur in this movie because it bites that poor guy. Like,
well, it doesn't eat him.
It just
when I saw this, I thought this was like a mistake they did. A brontosaurus is not a meat eater. It doesn't.
That's assuming brontosaurs are real at all. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Brontosaur thing.
R.I.P. Brontosaur.
I forgot to get this. So when I was mentioning when Kong doing his victory call and his pound on this outside of his cave lair, I mean, on top of the mountain, it's almost like he is saying, "I'm the king of the apes."
Basically, yeah.
I mean,
that's my Titanic references.
It's not just he's king of the apes. Like that whole journey across Skull Island. If you really pay attention to the things he fights the meat eater, which is a land-based creature. He fights that elasmos snake, which is a sea creature. Then he fights a pteranodon, which is an air creature. He is master of the elements.
He dominates
land, sea, and air.
He really is the master of his domain.
I gotta say that I want to talk about the cave fighting where these find like a little serpent or.
Well, it has flippers, so
I think it's called kind. I forgot what it's called. I mean,
plesiosaur.
Plesiosaur.
They call it the snake on the soundtrack. But,
yes,
the snake.
Yeah, we'll get to the soundtrack in a little bit. I mean, and when I first saw this film and when I saw this scene, I mean, I know something was crawling up on the edge of the screen. I was like, is that a giant snake from the 76?
You would think it might be, and I think a lot of people
we thought it
when
was,
they see it think it is, yeah.
But it's a plesiosaur with flippers.
Yeah, and then he literally just snaps him like a whip.
Cracks
his head a couple times. Set to the music, which is always just snap, da da.
And we have to talk about the music. I don't know what other subjects we have, but we do have to talk about the score.
Max Steiner.
Incredibly important that we talk about.
Yeah.
Max Steiner was a revolutionary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and because this was the first one of the. Was it the first? It was either the first or one of the first films where the score was done specifically to the movie.
Well, yeah, this is actually one of the first motion picture soundtracks.
Yeah, one of, because I do think he did music for The Most Dangerous Game, and that was released before.
Yes,
but like,
and I actually have the soundtrack of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the actual movie soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
Not like the orchestral soundtrack version of it, but the actual movie soundtrack. And I just love listening to it.
Yeah, and there's some things that are very commonplace in films now, like I said, where he was scoring it to the movie. There's even a bit of some, they call it Mickey Mousing, because that was something that was done a lot in films, and then particularly in cartoons. That's why it's called Mickey Mousing, where they use the music almost like sound effects. And the most obvious scene where you can see this happening is when the native chief is walking down the stairs, and every time he steps, you hear what instrument is that?
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember the name of the
cello. Isn't it?
Is it cello?
It sounded like some kind of a bass string, or
yeah, it was like wom, wom, wom.
It sounded like it almost sounded like a bassoon to me. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
it was a deep instrument, whatever it was.
Yeah,
and of course there was when he beats the snake like a whip. It's synced to that as well.
Oh yeah.
And they actually added that track to the Son of Kong film when he was finding another creature in the cave. And
the ending bit in New York where the train is being punched and you seeing people fall up, that set to music for every punch on the train, and then you see people fall out of the bottom. An entire scene that was not originally supposed to be in the film, which
and it was added because of superstition.
Yeah.
Because they would have made it come out to 13 reels, and that was considered unlucky. And Mary Sue Cooper's like, "My movie's not going to have 13 reels," so they added that to get it to 14. But then the funny thing was, he edited it down to 11.
They cut it out. They cut all that stuff anyway. But the 14th reel, quote unquote, scene, like that it's ended up in the movie, which is hysterical to me. But it's such a great moment, and I'm glad it's there. But Max Steiner,
music.
Max Steiner, who was so close to being fired so many times off of this film, because RKO didn't want to pay him. They didn't like what he was doing. They didn't like that he was there. They didn't like that they had to fork over money for something they didn't think was necessary. They thought, well, we can just use stock music. We can just use stock tracks. And Cooper came to Steiner's defense, as he should have, and said, listen, guys, there's no music in existence that can cover what we want to do. It's not going to fit right. It's not like, this movie is unprecedented and it needs its own music to match what's being seen. And I mean, we're just a couple of years after, I always think of the jump between, I love the Universal Monsters. Think of the jump in music between the original Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. The original Frankenstein has a great opening bit during the credits, and then a little music that plays after, like, once you see the end. It's a Universal picture,
and there's Bride of in the middle, but that has a source.
Exactly. So go to Bride of Frankenstein, you get Franz Waxman doing his thing, and it's music written for the scene specifically from beginning to end of that film. And that's another majestic score. Amazing.
That wouldn't have been done without Steiner accomplishing this.
Yes, that was 2 years after this. And if Steiner hadn't done that, then we wouldn't have gotten, just a year or two later, the music that came out. I mean, even a couple of other movies in 33 started doing it, after, because they were like, well, this changes everything. This is it. This is crazy. And from that point on, film scoring, it didn't just change it, it created it. It affected
It's interesting though, because at first there is no music like any other movie. When you're in New York, the music doesn't kick in until you're in that fog and you're in that other world.
Yeah, you do have the big bombastic piece for the credits.
Well, yeah.
And you have the overture, which is interesting. This has an overture. Nobody does that anymore.
Yeah, because nobody has the patience to sit and listen to good music in a movie anymore, unfortunately. No. I always see the first few times when I think I skipped the overture a couple times as a teenager.
I was just about to talk about the overture. Yeah. Like if you had like the DVD and Blu-ray version, I mean, if you like press play, it just shows the screen like overture. Yep. I think they only play it for like 5 or 10 minutes.
About 5. No, it's about 5 minutes.
About 5-6 minutes long. It's a selection of music, allowing people to get into the theater and sit down before the movie starts. That's what that is.
Kind of it's a very old timey way of doing a movie.
And just like just theatrical days.
Yeah, it's just like when you would get to the true epics, basically like before the 60s, I would say, and they would actually have, well, I guess there were some in the 60s that did this too, but they would have intermissions where it would just be a piece of music halfway through the movie that would play for about 10 minutes so people could go to the restroom, go get some more popcorn or whatever, and then the movie would start again.
And I don't know if they showed like previews back then. Or
they did.
They had coming attractions back then. So it was you have your coming attractions, and newsreels, and then the overture would start. And
they would have shorts.
They'd have cartoons as well. You can't forget
cartoons or a serial.
That's right. You'd have. There were going to the movies was a full thing back then, where it wasn't.
It was a full experience. Yeah. Like you were just getting like 2 hours, maybe 2.5. Once you include all the commercials and the coming attraction, no, it was like you were there for the whole evening. You got full service. You got coming attractions. You got a short, a newsreel, the main feature, probably a second movie.
And you got all of that for less than a movie ticket costs now.
It's crazy. Nowadays, you go see a movie. You hear sometimes, like, maybe depending on where you go, they'll play like some trivia or something, and the rest of it's just ads, and then a barrage of very loud movie trailers for like half an hour, and then your movie starts. Just imagine, dude. Imagine going to see like a Warner Brothers gangster picture in the late 30s, and you go in and you see a Looney Tunes or a Merry Melodies, like
as well as the latest adventures of Zorro or the Shadow.
Flash Gordon.
Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, Radar Men from the Moon, Nate.
The Green Archer.
Exactly.
Dr. Clayton.
The Phantom Creeps.
And when this film was released, I mean, back then, seeing a movie only cost like a nickel.
It was cheap. I mean,
but that was a lot back then. Actually, I think it was a dime. No, I think wasn't it a dime?
Well, whatever it was a lot for the Depression.
It was a lot for which is why it's amazing that this movie made as much money.
It's a dime that could have been spent on bread for your family. And people forked that money over.
They did, but remarkably, only the subtlest inferences of the Depression are in this movie.
That's what's meet Anne.
Yeah, when you meet Anne, that's where it's most obvious. But other than that, it's they don't really bring it up, which I find fascinating. And that was something that I talked about in those early podcast episodes, was just how it's there, but not really.
The point of the film, the point of the Depression illusion is to establish just to basically say, like, yeah, here's the world that you're familiar with, audience, but the movie's not about that. It's about it's escapism personified. It's one of the best pieces of escapism ever produced by the mind of man.
Yeah,
you don't want to think about the Depression while you're watching this movie. You don't want to think about what's going on outside those theater doors. You don't want to be reminded of the struggles. You don't want to be reminded of the turmoil and the uncertainty and the fear. You don't want to think about that. You want to be swept away by the grandest adventure you've ever seen.
Yeah, and if in a way, Anne kind of becomes the audience, because like I said, the depression is part of her motivation for why she goes along with this, because she needs work.
Well, the audience was motivated by the depression to watch this movie.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah.
There's I think there's also the factor that there are struggles in the movie, but there are struggles that can be defeated.
Yeah,
Tom is causing a ruckus in New York, but he can be shot down.
Yeah,
you also feel for him at the same time.
Yeah, which is one of the powers of this movie.
That scene with the Empire State Building and Kong's climbing up is one of the best icons in history. Like,
oh my gosh, and that was the Empire State Building was really new at the time. It had I think it had only been built just a few years before that. It was the tallest building in New York at the time, and
building in the world at the time.
That was true. And funny enough, I actually found out you guys have my home state to thank for the Empire State Building, and Kong owes my home state for having his iconic perch, because the foundation was made of limestone, and most of that limestone came from Indiana.
There you go.
And
you've justified Indiana's existence. Finally, there's a
really?
I'm kidding.
I justify Ohio's existence right now.
Neil Armstrong.
Okay, Cedar Point. I'll give you Cedar Point. Okay,
no, you're gonna put Cedar Point over landing on the whatever. I don't know. That's another podcast.
Never happened.
Snazzy. No.
Omni, you better be glad Jimmy's not here. He would be very angry.
Snazzy.
And
fake used to be believable, Snazzy.
Oh wow, it's 2 hours and 15 minutes. So
we warned you, dude. We warned you.
That means we still have 3-4 hours to go.
Yeah, that's right.
No, 5.
But actually, I want to talk about the last part that we kind of left out in the middle is Willis O'Brien himself.
Oh, we did talk about Willis O'Brien.
We talked a little, but we gotta circle back and talk about some visual effects stuff.
Yeah,
that's imperative,
and the visual effects too. I mean,
that is imperative to any discussion about Kong.
I mean, Willis O'Brien, he's a genius. He did the dinosaurs, and he actually did some stop motion films back then, like in the early 1900s. I mean,
when he was there were short films, and he was just trying to figure out how to do all of this. I actually had Omni and Snazzy here on the Film Vault to talk about one of his other movies that eventually led to this. It's how I launched season 3, The Lost World from 1925. And it's interesting to watch that, knowing what happens with King Kong, because you can see the prototype for what would become King Kong.
The dinosaur
in
eyes.
Yeah, and I guess say that the King Kong plot of the film is kind of sounds similar to The Lost World. There's some similarities.
RKO actually purchased the rights to the novel just to be sure that they weren't going to get in trouble for swiping a couple of Doyleisms from the narrative.
Yeah, well, I would argue that King Kong borrows from a lot of different sources. It borrows from Burroughs, Joseph Conrad, a lot of different things. And it wears those influences on its sleeve, and I think it makes it all the better for it.
I mean, Willis O'Brien did his first stop motion picture film of the first realistic movie dinosaurs he ever did was The Ghost of Slumber Mountain.
Yes.
Oh, Ghost of Slumber Mountain. Yes.
Yeah,
which if you can get the fancy schmancy Blu-ray of The Lost World, those shorts are included as special features, and they're really interesting to watch.
Wow.
Yes. If you want some really great stop motion dinosaur, like antique stop motion dinosaur stuff, it's all on YouTube. Look up his Thomas Edison shorts. Look up The Dinosaur and the Missing Link, Prehistoric Poultry. They're just delightful films. The Dinosaur and the Missing Link is noteworthy because it does have a kind of proto simian creature in it that's kind of got some Kong lineage, you could argue. So if you want to see the first time Willis O'Brien stop motion animated an ape, go watch that. They're all on YouTube. They're fun. If you can get nice looking copies of them, get them. They're out there. But if you want to see it for free, it's there too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I say I should do a podcast episode about the original 1925, The Lost World.
Oh, you should. It's an interesting little movie. Although I would recommend that you bring on somebody who knows a lot about how film worked in the 1920s, because there's some stuff in it that makes it a little hard to watch at points.
Yeah, and
there's some questionable stuff in it.
Signs of the time.
The signs of the times.
Signs of the times.
Sure.
And let's stick a cork in that one.
yeah, and I want to I
Yeah.
want to talk about the last part is the technology and the merging the trajectory of the special effects.
Oh
how
my
they
gosh,
film.
like they were literally making stuff up to make this movie.
Yeah, I mean,
it all worked.
They were inventing techniques to make this movie.
Yeah, but O'Brien patented the whole package, didn't he?
Yep, basically, they're most of the camera techniques that were used for the film, particularly the setups and the modifications that he did to Linwood Dunn's optical printer. One of the first times an optical printer was used on this scale for the film, for the film industry, I mean. But there's like all this crazy stuff that went on just for that. I mean, there's so many layers here. We could be here forever, but some
literal layers of the shots.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, there's layers. I mean, like the way they did the backgrounds. To what they wanted. They did back projection for something like the shot when they're walking in front of the stegosaur. That's back projection. They're the actors are literally walking on a treadmill. You
can kind of tell. But,
you can. Once you can't unsee it. Yeah.
Yeah, they did an amazing job with this. And I think they actually used some real glass to repaint for some backgrounds parts. I mean, to make it look like realistic.
Yeah, because they were trying to make the jungle look thicker, because they did have a set where with props with trees and everything that the actors could interact with, but they wanted to make it look even thicker in the background. So that's why they had all of the stuff like you're talking about with painting it on glass, and they would put it in front of the camera to give it some foreground layers and things like that.
Sometimes gluing three-dimensional stuff to that glass in the foreground.
Mm-hmm.
They glued plants on there. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's like I said, nobody had done anything close to that before.
The effect in the film that I think blows my mind the most is it's kind of hard to describe without seeing it like diagrammed out, but we were talking about the rear projection technology, where they would have moments where you would see little tiny people moving in the set near the stop motion puppets. One of the better examples of that in the film is they're all great, but one of the most iconic is pardon me, Driscoll hiding in the cave and Kong reaching down to try to grab him, and he's going to stab him. So for scenes like that, they built little projection screens into the set, and then they took the footage that they shot of the actors, stabbing or running or, doing this, and advanced it one frame at a time at the same time as the puppets. But what blows that alone is innovative and brilliant enough. But what absolutely blows my mind is there are multiple moments in the film. They're infrequent, but if you know where to watch them, you can find them, where you have these little screens built into the miniature sets, and you say you have Kong in the background, and he walks behind a layer of the set behind where that screen is in real life. Like there's a set and there's the screen. There's a problem. If you make the puppet go through, it's going to block the light behind the set so that you'll see the shadow and it blocks the image on the screen. And the way they fixed that was with mirrors. This movie is smoke and mirrors. They had the projector at an angle, and it bounced the image off of a mirror at a 90-degree angle and onto the miniature projection screen in the set.
That's what they did.
And it blows my mind.
Oh, there's a name for that. I can't remember what it is.
There's a I can't remember what the heck it is, but there's like an optical name for it, and I can't remember.
I gotta say that's like a really cool effect that they did. They just use a mirror and they just reflect.
And whatever it's called, it was ingenious.
It was ingenious, and it was a layer of ingenuity on top of another layer of ingenuity. This whole movie is an ingenuity sandwich. That's what this is.
An ingenuity sandwich.
An ingenuity sandwich. That is what King Kong is right there.
Ingenuity sandwich TM.
Yeah.
And
that's copyright, trademark. Oh yeah. And I'm selling T-shirts.
And also I was also amazed at how how Kong picks up Anne and then he puts back down and it shows the projector screen of Anne in person, and then when Kong goes to pick her up, it just switched to the figure.
Yeah.
And that's like a cool effect that they did.
Yeah. Danny, your T-shirt needs to say, Willis, make me an ingenuity sandwich.
Willis, make me an ingenuity sandwich.
Yeah, it's signed Marion C. Cooper.
I will add that to my long list of T-shirt ideas that I will probably never follow up on, but would love to one day. Hey, TeePublic, let's make it happen. It's just amazing the layering that was done for this. The optical printing process alone of layering the images, and the fact that they were so terrified that the multiple layering was going to cook the nitrate film. Because that's the thing is in those days, film nitrate is one of the most flammable things ever created by the mind of man. Why do you think so many films are lost to warehouse fires? The stuff catches on fire if you look at it weird. And
looking at you, 1971 DIA employees.
Yep. So let's think about this for a second. We're 98% done with our effect shots for King Kong, and we've got to layer a couple of scenes into the optical printer. We're going to compress the film. We're going to make one print out of it. And then it catches on fire and the entire movie is destroyed. What are you going to tell your bosses believe in the movie?
They
built a fan into this machine. They built a fan to cool the film as it went through strip by strip.
Yeah, they actually did that. They used fans around and they're filming it because some of the cameras and the heaters in there are so hot.
Studios are hot places. The lights are hot, the machinery is hot, and this is 90-year-old machinery at this point. That stuff is efficient enough to get the job done, but maybe not efficient enough to not explode if you don't watch it carefully enough. So
just to give you a tokusatsu example, in the 50s when they were making the Mysterians and you had Nakajima in the Mogura suit, it was so hot in that studio that all the crew members around him, he's in this big, heavy, sweaty suit, okay? And all the crew members around him are working shirtless because it's just that hot.
And he's in a giant box. He's in a giant sweat box. It is a miracle that man lived into the 60s. It really is.
And also, I don't know if you've and they actually they actually used two films, projector films. They actually put them together when they use some scenes for backgrounds. I don't know, they used blue screens back then. I mean,
no, it was a projection.
The closest thing they had to blue screen was actually black screen, like they used in The Invisible Man.
Yes,
but it wasn't nearly as refined.
No. You needed to have, the thing about that is the techniques are genius enough on their own, but without a legitimate visionary who knows how to take all of that technology and use it correctly, it's just a bunch of hardware. You mentioned The Invisible Man. John P. Fulton was a genius. John P. Fulton was the guy who made Claude Rains invisible for that film. And those effects will never not be just stunning to look at. It was technically innovative to the nth degree. And then you bring in Willis O'Brien and it's the same thing. He had a crew of people who knew what they were doing. He knew what he was doing. Everybody from the people operating the optical printers to the people who were, building these things. And I mean, King Kong is a story of so many unsung heroes. One of the great things about the visual effects of Kong that doesn't get talked about nearly enough is Mario Laranaga's matte paintings that were done for the film, which were very detailed in some instances and then very kind of vague and impressionistic in others, depending on how close you saw them. I actually got to see about a year ago now, almost exactly a year, some of Laranaga's work for Son of Kong in person at an exhibition that came into Michigan.
I'm only a little jealous.
Yeah. And I'm gonna have to stop you right there, guys. So it's just about that time, and
I think we've exhausted most every aspect of the film. I think we talked about.
I gotta say, this is pretty much a very long podcast I ever done. So
I do have.
Look who you have on, and remember what we're talking about.
I did have one more thing I wanted to bring up about the far-reaching influence of this movie.
Yeah,
and it does circle back around to Max Steiner's score. Because, it not only set the standard for film scores, it kind of set the standard for what music we associate with the Lost World and dinosaurs sound like. To the point where even to this day, there's actually a kind of new subgenre of ambient music known as dino synth.
Yeah,
people make just use a synthesizer to make these ambient landscapes that sound prehistoric, and they sound very much like Steiner's music. And this is nigh unto a century later. I mean, I know it's not exactly there, but it's getting close. And that's still the sound we associate with that kind of thing. So
it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was very interesting. So I think that's just about that time. So it's it's getting late. So and I want to say thank you for joining me on this this very special podcast episode about the eighth wonder of the world, the one that started it all. And
yeah, you got to say it with some Carl Denham gusto there, man. Yes.
Yeah.
The eighth wonder of the world.
Yeah.
Kong.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, I still love this film to this day, and and many people will recognize the big ape himself after 91 years.
Think about how amazing that is. 91 years, and there's a new freaking Kong movie coming out next month. Like that's crazy to me.
And I'm going to say this now, and unlike some people we know, I am actually looking forward to this, because one of the things I find interesting about the MonsterVerse is doing with Kong is I think they're leaning even more into the pulpy tradition that Kong came out of. I mean, we've got Kong going to the center of the earth now and ruling a kingdom there. Kong is on a hero's journey, and I am all for it.
Right.
It's the kind of journey that he wasn't even allowed to go on for so long because people just kept remaking the original.
Well, which is the problem, is that Godzilla has been able to expand and be versatile, but this original movie that we have spent the better part of 2.5 hours talking about is so close to being that perfect. Like, it is one of the probably the closest to perfection movies that's ever been produced, that they can't get Kong away from it. That's the problem. That's how good it actually is.
Yeah.
But they did. And now we've got Kong the Barbarian, and I love it.
Well, we'll say that for another podcast episode.
Right.
Oh, yeah. We'll have to say that.
Like I said, I'm just about to wrap it out. So I just want to thank you guys again for joining me in this episode to talk about the original 33 Kong film, and it's one of my favorite ones from my childhood. And so the next Kong marathon episode will be Son of Kong. So be sure to like and subscribe for more podcast episodes coming soon. I like it saying Japanese. Oh wait, this is not a Godzilla film podcast marathon. I know it's getting late, and tomorrow's Super Bowl. It means it's a big day tomorrow. So, how should I say and wrap this? Like I
see you later.
I
Do the Kamasonic song chant.
Or oh wait, I got one. Yes. So so good night, folks, and remember, it wasn't the airplanes. It was Beauty killed the Beast,
and it was you who ended the stream.
There you go.